hostages, and then we will be going backwards and forwards with questions from Glasgow and Edinburgh and online. So we'll try to make sure that everybody gets the chance. We've had some questions written in advance, and there'll be some questions from the floor. So please, can you put your hands together tonight and welcome First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is that on? Oh, we're on. I'm not the First Minister, John Swinney, as Nicholas said, but maybe one day First Minister, we'll see. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you from wherever you are in the world to this evening's event. I'm delighted that my mum and dad, who are on the Zoom from Israel, where I spoke with them last night, they were in their safe room as rockets were intercepted outside. So stay safe, my wonderful parents. I have the honour of introducing you to our guest. Joining the SNP at age 15, he has been active in politics throughout his entire life, being responsible for many important roles, including National Secretary for the SNP at the age of 22, Member of Parliament for Tayside North from 1997 to 2001, Finance Secretary, Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills, Cabinet Secretary for COVID Recovery, Deputy First Minister of Scotland, and in May this year was appointed First Minister of Scotland. His relationship with the Jewish community has been strengthened throughout his career, and his unwavering support for us was most recently shown when he invited our leaders to meet with him within his first week as First Minister. He openly showed his support by personally speaking in the 60th anniversary Calderwood Lodge parliamentary debate. Ladies and gentlemen, our First Minister of Scotland, the Right Honourable John Swinney MSP.
Thank you very much, Timothy, and it's an enormous pleasure to be with you tonight. As Timothy has said, I started off my term as First Minister in May and very swiftly met with representatives of the Jewish community, which was not a first meeting for me. I've had ongoing dialogue with the Jewish community for many, but actually throughout my parliamentary life. I was just reflecting with him about how closely he has been involved in the parliamentary journey of the Scottish Parliament over the last 25 years, of which I've had the privilege to be a member of Parliament in the Scottish Parliament since its inception, and the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities has been a very active participant in the dialogue within Parliament and in the engagement that we take forward. One of the events that I've had the privilege to speak at was the 25th anniversary event where His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen came to Parliament for the 25th anniversary commemoration event. And I quoted in my response to the King's speech that day the first words that were put on the parliamentary record in 1999 by my colleague, the late Winnie Ewing. Some words that Winnie Ewing, many of you will know Winnie Ewing, she was a seminal figure, deeply connected with the Jewish community in Glasgow. And when Winnie was there, she was rather affronted actually by the fact that because she was affronted and delighted in equal measure, that because she was the oldest member, she was the one that went into the chair first to swear in all the members of Parliament. So she was affronted about her age being used, but delighted it gave her the pathway to be the member of Parliament. So my Winnie Ewing was affronted that her age was being used as the basis of enabling her to be the first member into the chair, and delighted because it gave her the opportunity to swear in everybody and then to put the first words on the parliamentary record. The first words she put on the parliamentary record were that she hoped that no matter where people had come from in the world, they would be able to live happily within Scotland, alongside those of us like me and her who were born and brought up in Scotland and had lived here all of our days, but that we would be able to live in harmony and happiness together. And I paid tribute in that speech to the fact that over 25 years, I basically heard that message being reflected, contributions and in the leadership of everybody within the Scottish Parliament. And I mean that quite literally, without exception, that I think members of Parliament of all political persuasions have actively worked to create an environment of inclusion and cohesion within our society, whereby it doesn't matter where we have come from, we're all living here together in Scotland, and we want to create the most harmonious society that we can. And those sentiments really sum up my view of how we should proceed as parliamentarians, how we should proceed as a society, that we should create a cohesive and inclusive environment, one where people are safe, no matter their background, where they feel safe, and where they are able to participate in an atmosphere of collaboration with others in our society. And that's really where I start off with my contribution to this discussion this evening. I look forward very much to answering your questions tonight. Where I would say that my desire is to ensure that we have a society in which people are able to live safely and to live an inclusive life within our society. When I met with representatives of the Scojec, when I was appointed as First Minister, I promised that I would engage with the community. I promised I would come and have engage in a public meeting of this type, and I'm delighted that we've got the opportunity to do it, and that we can also link to our friends in Edinburgh and to those who've dialed in across the globe. At the heart of the approach I want to take as First Minister is I want to ensure that we operate in an atmosphere of respect for people of different faiths and different traditions. 18 months ago, the government published a faith and belief engagement strategy, and that has paved the way for a number of elements of dialogue and discussion across different faiths within our society. And a few weeks ago, we had the first Faith and Belief Conference, which the Scottish Government hosted through Edinburgh, and it drew together representatives of all faiths within Scotland. And I found that an enormously encouraging occasion for gathering faiths together and ensuring that we could encourage dialogue and support and collaboration amongst different faith communities. So that's the approach that I want us to take. You have my solemn commitment as First Minister that those will be the values and aspirations that I will at all times reflect in my actions as First Minister, and I am very happy to be judged on that basis. I appreciate that we meet at a time of enormous sensitivity and difficulty for the Jewish community in Scotland and around the globe, and the appalling attacks of the 7th of October 2023, which were unwarranted and which have caused such distress and anxiety and angst for the people of Israel and to the Jewish community around the world. Timothy's talked about his parents being in Israel at this moment. There are so many connections from here to Israel. I recognise the depth of that anxiety and that unease as a consequence of the attack that was perpetrated just over a year ago. It is unspeakable. The hostages that were taken must be returned. They should have been returned a long time ago. It's unacceptable that they have not been returned, and there must be that return to safety for those hostages. There are, of course, wider implications of the conflict in the Middle East. I have made no secret of the fact that I have called for a ceasefire in the conflict in the Middle East. The level of human suffering that is now ongoing is unconscionable in my view, and we need to get to a position of peace and safety. And my view is that that can only be achieved if there's a recognition of a two-state solution and the recognition of an independent sovereign Palestinian state in the Middle East, where we can have the respect of the legal framework in which we should all operate within our society, and that we can work together collaboratively with international support to enable there to be peace within the Middle East. But I acknowledge in all of this how difficult and challenging this period is because of the implications of that conflict for all of you here in Scotland and engaging in this discussion around the world. So I'll leave it there, Timothy. That's what I would share with you as my opening remarks. I'm really grateful to you all for coming out this evening, and for those joining us online for this conversation, and I look forward to engaging in your questions in the course of this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, First Minister, and I do look forward to asking you lots of questions. We are going to go to Edinburgh though and ask Rabbi Rose to say a prayer for the return of the hostages.
Yosef, Mosh, Varon, David, Shlomo, Uriarek, Shmo, Vinsot, Chatufim, Vashvuim, Vanifkaim, Betoch Shachenu, Beit Yisrael, Anatunim, Batzarau, Shivya, Bavor Sha'anu, Mitpalalim, Bavoram, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Imalera, Chamim Alehem, Yotzeim, Mechoshek, Betzalmavet, Musotehem, Ninatek, Musukotehem, Yoshiem, V'shivei meira lechek mishpechotehem, יודו לאדוני חסדו ונפלאותיו לבני אדם, וקיים בהם מקרא שכתוב, ופדויי אדוני שובו ובאו ציון ברינה, Amen. May he who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, David, and Solomon, may he bless, preserve, and protect all the captives and hostages. May he rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this community who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be he, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May he return them to their families swiftly and soon. Now let us say Amen.
First Minister, our team have collected and condensed a number of questions which were submitted in advance from members of our communities. Some will be asked by me, some by Matthew Shapps, the chair of Edinburgh Hebrew Congregation, some by audience members who submitted in advance, and then we will open questions from the floor if there's time. Get right into it. Although I'm having a glass of water over the First Minister, thank you very much, First Minister.
Actually, I can do a job as a barber as well.
Thank you very much. First Minister, how are you committed to tackling all forms of hate, including anti-Semitism in the SNP and the Scottish Government?
The first thing I would say is that there is absolutely no place, in my view, in any part of our society, whether that's in the Scottish National Party or the Scottish Government or any aspect of our society, for anti-Semitism. I think we have a legal framework in Scotland that enables these issues to be confronted and to be addressed. And I know that obviously there's a lot of controversy about the formulation of the hate crime legislation in Scotland that was taken forward by the Scottish Government, but its purpose was designed to codify and to set out the unacceptability of hate crime and hate speech in any respect within our society. There's obviously due respect for free speech, but in my view, we should be very, very careful in defining what are our expectations on hate speech so that we do not in any way have free speech being used as an excuse for hate speech. I think there's another important dimension, which is about the role and the purpose of our education system. Because if you go to the heart of our curriculum in Scottish education, the heart of our curriculum, we are aiming to ensure that young people are equipped with the four capacities. They are to be confident individuals, responsible citizens, successful learners, and effective contributors. And you will not achieve those four capacities if you are in any way influenced or affected by or perpetrating anti-Semitism. That will just not fit into the character that we're expecting to be achieved from Scottish education. So these values and these fundamental values in our education system are an important element of structuring how people should be, how we should lead the debate about what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in our society. And that gives us the foundation of ensuring that culturally within Scotland we do not have any prevalence of anti-Semitism. Where there is any evidence of anti-Semitism, it must be confronted, and we have a legal framework that enables us to do that.
Thank you, First Minister. First Minister, the census shows that there are Jewish people in every part of Scotland, but in many, the number is too small for the local authority to acknowledge far less support. What can the Scottish Government do to ensure that those who need it most are supported to affirm and celebrate their heritage?
I think there's a couple of important points in there. One is that all local authorities should be working to address the needs of their own community, and that should be action taken to ensure that those values that I talked about in my opening remarks that were very much drawn from the landmark contributions of you into our parliamentary debate, and that we are essentially encouraging inclusive communities. That focus on inclusion is really important in all of the actions that public authorities should be taking. The second element is that local authorities should be considering the challenges and the issues they face in relation to the provision of services and facilities within communities. So therefore, where there is the emergence of a community and there are needs around that community, the local authorities should be working with that community to support those individuals. There's a separate dimension, I suppose, which is about the community itself and how it structures itself and it connects with others to enable people to practice their faith. And that's, and obviously that issue is wrestled with by different faith communities around the country. You know, the Catholic Church and the Protestant, the Church of Scotland are wrestling with the manifestation of the facilities for worship around the country because of the changing engagement with faith and with religious practice around the country. So that's a challenge for the Jewish community itself, but I would hope public authorities would be engaged or constructive in taking forward any aspirations within the Jewish community in that respect. There will of course be aspirations that will manifest themselves as calls for engagement about a school provision and other specific community provision, which must be the subject of course of engagement with individual communities.
Thank you, First Minister. I think you answered the question. However, it leads me nicely to my next question, because you managed to pass all that along to local authorities. My next question is, will the First Minister give a commitment that his government will always protect the right of faith communities to continue to observe their own practices so long as no others are affected, for example, in relation to medical and ethical issues?
I think I could say yes to that question, but I suspect I probably just want to be, well, fundamentally, yes, I would say that should be the case. But there may well be issues which potentially conflict with statutory provision within Scotland, which of course should only be formulated after dialogue with individual communities. But fundamentally, I'm a believer in the rule of law. That's a big part of who I am. And so therefore that might have implications for the community, but we should never arrive at those conclusions in arbitrary fashion. We should always be aware of any implications or issues that might be of concern to our community. And of course, if there are any specific issues, I would happily address any of those specific ones.
Thank you, First Minister. I know that you have actually certainly your office and the Scottish Government over the years has dealt with lots of issues as when they've arisen, but I'm glad to hear that in principle you're happy to accept that on behalf of the government. I'd like to go to the floor for a question from Susan Siegel. If Susan's around, Gary, that's okay, you can come and help me. Philip, do we have another microphone or do you want to switch?
No, you need to use. Sorry. That's Susan.
Can you hear me okay? I'm Susan Siegel, I'm the chair of Farnham Hill Synagogue, and I'm also on the board of the Red Council. And you may know, and I know that you've made some announcements, this is Interfaith Week. And we're all very pleased that you had the opportunity to join us here. And I do have a question about interfaith. There are many initiatives across Scotland, but there's still quite a bit of work to do to encourage community cohesion. And some people seem to want deliberately to use the situation in the Middle East to drive a wedge between communities in Scotland. So what can the Scottish Government do to bring communities together for meaningful cross-communal work?
Thank you very much for the question, Susan. And I very much welcome the question, and I welcome the whole focus on interfaith and dialogue and engagement. One of the points I made in my speech was the recent Faith and Belief conference that the Scottish Government had hosted. And it really was, I found that I spent a couple of hours there, which for first ministerial time, that's quite a long time for me to spend at any one thing. And I found it invigorating at two levels. First of all, as a man of faith, I found it invigorating to be in that environment with representatives of our various faith communities. But as First Minister, I found it enormously reassuring that a constructive dialogue that was taking place amongst our faith and belief communities. I did not get a sense in that discussion of any desire amongst any element of our faith and belief communities to drive a wedge amongst faith and belief communities. I'm not naive enough to think that there isn't a desire out with some of these communities to do that, but I certainly had the sense of a real commitment, an enduring commitment of those present to try to work to bring faith and belief communities together. And that conference was a product of some really good outreach work that's been taken forward by civil servants within the Scottish Government, and my team are here to support me tonight. They've invested significant amounts of time and commitment and patient dialogue to make sure that we are able to build ever stronger interfaith connections within Scotland. So I think the role of the government in all of that is to try to be, I suppose, a facilitator of good dialogue amongst our faith communities, to encourage a sense of coming together amongst faith and belief communities, and to make sure that we are constructing as many bridges and pathways to come together as we can. And so I give you that commitment that, you know, that work is really important to me within the Scottish Government. It's well engaged with amongst my team, the team is forward, and I felt there was a tremendously positive and encouraging atmosphere around that conference. And it was triggering a whole host of other conversations that will follow up on that conference to make sure that we're creating that sense within Scotland. So I am rather optimistic that interfaith activity can thrive with the positive and nurturing encouragement of the Scottish Government.
Thank you, First Minister. Thank you, Susan. I do have lots of questions, however, I like other people asking them as well. So I'll invite Nicola Livingston, if you'd like to ask a question.
Thank you. I have a question, which a bit longer because it's an amalgamation of two questions which have been sent in by the chairs of Jewish Care Scotland and Cultural Care, who couldn't be here this evening. Jewish Care Scotland is a charity providing registered services to members of the Jewish community, both in our centre and at home. We receive a grant from East Renfrewshire Council for these specific services and have been advised halfway through the financial year that they're proposing to cut this by more than 50%. Cosgrove Care is a charity providing day support and care at home to children, adults and older people with learning disabilities, autistic spectrum disorders and mental health issues, both the Jewish community and wider local community. The majority of this work is provided under contract to local councils via the National Flexible Framework. There's not been an increase in the rate awarded to those contracts, which means it is significantly, I think about 5.3% below full cost recovery for providing these services. Along with major cuts to supported people's individual budgets, which has resulted in a £250,000 reduction in income from East Renfrewshire alone. All this, along with the new living wage and changes to national insurance employer contributions, will have a significant financial impact on all charities, but we felt more keenly by small organisations providing very specific support to marginalised communities. What does the First Minister think of these cuts, and what does he intend to do to support third sector organisations who underpin the statutory services in Scotland but appear to be easy targets for cuts?
Thanks, Nicola. There's a lot in there, and a lot of it is it's all very significant. And some of it is not specific to the experience of members of the youth community. I'm afraid it's part of a wider challenge. First of all, the Jewish care situation with a cut of 50% midway through the year from East Renfrewshire Council. That feels to me to be fundamentally wrong to do that. So if you commit that, part of what I've been wrestling with this year, and it's, you know, got a fair amount of a programme from different sources, I've been holding back money that's not been allocated to particular services because I wasn't confident that we would be able to balance our resources during this financial year. We have a legal obligation to balance the budget every year in the Scottish Government. And with the effect of inflation and also of public sector pay settlements that were higher than we anticipated, I was very nervous about whether or not we could live within our means. So I restricted the dispatch of resources to different organisations. Now, we've got ourselves in a position now, it's November, we're now more confident that we're actually confident now we can balance our budget. So we're releasing resources to go out to different organisations. What you put to me on the East Renfrewshire Council situation is slightly different, which is that a commitment has been given to a grant and halfway through the year it's been cut. That I don't think is acceptable. So part of what we've done is we've basically not made commitments so that we just said to people at the start of the year, I'm sorry, we don't know if we can make a commitment to you this year. If we're now able to do it, then we're able to do that. I think it's wrong to make a commitment and then walk back from it. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's proper process. So I would, I would encourage you to talk to elected members and put some pressure on about that. On the secondary area of issues about day support, the lack of an increase in budgets, the falling below full cost recovery. These are, I'm afraid, and the £250,000 cut from the service accounts, so these are, I'm afraid, the products of austerity. And we've had 14 years of it, and I was banging on during the general election campaign earlier on this year about the importance of bringing all of that to an end. Because I thought public services needed more investment to enable us to support people better. And exactly the first that you're talking about, particularly on social care. Now, there has been an increase in funding made available through the United Kingdom budget on the 30th of October. But the difficulty is that one of the means of increasing the budget has come about from increasing employers' national insurance contributions, which is then the issue that you raise, potentially undermining the financial health of care organisations. And I'm really concerned about this. I was raising this in some of my answers at First Minister's question time earlier on today, because that increase in employers' national insurance contributions is paid by everybody that employs anybody. So we think in the public sector, we will get compensation for that from the UK government. I don't think that's going to be forthcoming for the charitable sector. And that simply increases the costs of these organisations and limits the ability that they have to meet the demands placed upon them. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. And I was challenged today at First Minister's question, so it's all very well to moan about employers' national insurance contribution increases. What would you do about it? And what we've done in Scotland is that we've increased income tax for those who are earning higher salaries. Now, that's not universally popular, and if you're somebody who's paid a higher level of salary, you're paying more in taxation. But to me, that's the honest and transparent way of doing it, as opposed to trying to avoid the scrutiny with employers' national insurance contributions, but what it increases, but what it then does is undermine the sustainability of care organisations. And ultimately, vulnerable people will suffer. And that's, I'm very concerned about the risks that are faced by people in that context. I should finally say, sorry, forgive me, the final point I'd make is that we are going to try to do as much as we can in the Scottish budget on the 4th of December to remedy these issues. But there will be limits to what we can do, because again, we've got to live within our means.
Thank you, and it's much easier to interview somebody when they have something to say, so you can keep the microphone as not really that works for me, First Minister. Thank you, Nicola. We're going to have another question from the floor from Kimberly Vance.
Thanks, sir. My name is Kimberly Balance. I run a teaching service within the local authority for vulnerable children. I am aware there are many people here tonight who are eager to speak, but my question does require context, but I will try to keep this as succinct as possible. I want to give you a very brief overview of the work that I've undertaken this year, which will then lead me to my question. As well as running an education service, I am the co-chair of the Jewish Teachers Network for Scotland. I co-founded this network on October the 7th, 2023, the same day that we saw the largest number of Jews murdered since the Holocaust, and the same day that a Scottish educator and prominent member of the EIS, Scotland's largest teaching union, posted online that the massacre was justified resistance. I immediately alerted the General Secretary of the EIS, Andrea Bradley, who incidentally I had worked with a few years previously when she consulted me about Holocaust education. I waited for her to share in my horror and to offer her support. That's not what happened. I was met with stonewall silence. Then after a few weeks, I received a passive-aggressive response from Ms. Bradley, proclaiming that This is just how social media works, I'm afraid, and that the post was not anti-Semitic in nature, because apparently we are the only minority whose discrimination against us can be defined by outsiders. Days after this, Miss Bradley was pictured on social media, arm in arm with the author of the post, at a pro-Palestine rally in the town centre, holding the EIS banner proudly and smiling for the camera. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Many other incidents of a similar nature followed, which eventually culminated in 30 Jewish teachers feeling they had no choice but to leave the union. No investigation into allegations of institutionalised anti-Semitism ever ensued. I now fight daily for Jewish teachers who have been alienated from their unions and their places of work due to institutionalised anti-Semitism, and for Jewish pupils, including my own children, who have been the target of anti-Jewish racism. I don't just fight for our rights as a minority, I also fight for the rights of all Scottish children who deserve not to be indoctrinated by deeply flawed and incredibly dangerous teaching resources currently in circulation, and indoctrination by teaching staff who violate the general teaching standards to impart their own ideologies on our vulnerable children. Most recently, I fought to protect children from a teacher who advertised an online training session titled Teaching Resistance in the Classroom. She posted this on a primary school social media page on the 1st of September, the day that the bodies of 6 of our hostages were found murdered in a terror tunnel. I am now in a position where I am fighting all of these same battles in our further and higher education institutions, namely Glasgow University and Strathclyde University, at the same time as confronting the Scottish Trade Union Congress with regards to their appalling flyer for the upcoming anti-racism and anti-fascist rally, which seeks to exclude Jews while promoting the narrative that we are the racists and the fascists. Let's just put our cards on the table and call it what it is. It is an anti-Israel march, which makes life harder for everybody sitting here and their children. I am not even being pacified by these institutions. At best, I am being dismissed. At worst, completely and utterly ignored. The only tangible result we have seen in over a year's worth of work is a head teacher agreeing to take an anti-Semitic poem written by a primary school child in Edinburgh off of the school's social media page. It is 2024, and I'm having conversations with my husband about contingency plans and exit plans if Scotland becomes unsafe for us and our family. I am questioning what universities will be safe for my children, or whether they will have to compromise part or all of their Jewish identity in order to be safe. It is 2024, and both of my children have said to me that they are worried that other pupils at school will find out that they are Jewish. Finally, it is 2024, and my community was subjected to a hate crime during our October the 7th vigil for 2 long hours, while the police looked on, by a perpetrator who was honoured at the Scottish Muslim Awards. There is a sick irony in the fact that this occurred on the last day of Glasgow City Council's Hate Crime Awareness Week. I believe you'll be asked more about this incident, so I will move on to focusing on my question on the topic of education. I have told you what I am doing. And now I ask, what are you doing to keep educators and children safe from anti-Jewish racism and from divisive and hateful ideologies currently being promoted by some Scottish educators within Scottish educational institutions? And what are you doing to ensure that Jewish college and university students don't end up in the same position as their American counterparts, who are now having to legally enforce their civil rights in order to be safe on campus?
Yes, it is deeply, deeply troubling to hear the experience that you've recounted to me, and I'm sorry that's been your experience. And let me just try to address a number of different components of what you've said to me. the first thing I would say is that I'm the First Minister of Scotland. I'm responsible for public services and public authorities in Scotland. I'm afraid my reach does not stretch as far as the internal regulation of the EIS. So I hear what you say, and I think in our society, and I've said that throughout my contribution this evening, my aspiration that Scotland should be a country that is inclusive, that is respectful of the distinctive identities and backgrounds of people, and that everybody should be able to live harmoniously side by side. So that I would want to see reflected in all organisations, and any organisation that I'm responsible for. That is the assurance I give you, that will be the character of what happens within that organisation. Now, you mentioned the fact that you and your family, your children, I think it would be fair to say that you said you felt unsafe, which worries me fundamentally, because you must be able to feel safe in our society. The experience that you had about your vigil, obviously I don't know the specific circumstances, but I would want an essential part of our society is that people must be able to freely assemble and to undertake a vigil of that type. Right, it's within the law. It has to be enabled to take place by Police Scotland, and I know from my other wider discussion with the Scottish Council for Jewish Communities that there is regular engagement with Police Scotland about issues of community safety, and I can assure you in my dialogue with the Chief Constable, the primacy of community safety is absolutely fundamental to what I take forward. Now, you mentioned the nature of our education system, and I come back to what I said earlier on about the 4 capacities within our education system. I cannot see how any sense of an approach to perpetrate an anti-Semitic message or approach is in any way compatible with the 4 capacities of Scottish education, which are about creating responsible citizens, confident individuals, successful learners, effective contributors. And fundamentally, the values of inclusion that lie at the heart of our curricular approach should be the foundation of being an antidote to all of that. Now, there is a very sharp point to all of that, which is then about the performance of educators. And there is a regulatory body, which is not the EIS, that regulates the performance of teachers, the General Teaching Council of Scotland, who are established to ensure that teaching standards and approaches are at an appropriate level in our society. So therefore there is a means of confronting conduct and performance that you find that about which people are concerned. Lastly, on higher and further education institutions, they must be inclusive campuses. They must be, and I will, I will take your concerns into my dialogue with University of Scotland and College of Scotland about these questions, because also there is another important dimension, which is that if your children were to go to an institution in Scotland away from home, they're going to live in accommodation in a different city, different environment. You and they have got to be assured about their safety, particularly when they're out with the parental and family environment. I think that's absolutely fundamental. If I think about that as a father, I want my children safe. I don't want them to be in any unsafe environment. And that should be how you feel as well as how we want to feel as well. So I'll take away those concerns that you've raised with me, and I will raise them with with University of Scotland, College of Scotland, to ensure that your concerns are properly handled. Thank you for raising those.
Thank you, First Minister, and thank you, Kimberly. What we say, my daughter was at Dundee University, and the first time I had any problems, I'm driving to Dundee via Edinburgh to pick you up, and you can sort it out. We're going to go to Edinburgh. I believe Matthew has a question. We don't have.
Thank you, First Minister. Linked really to the previous question about education, prejudice thrives on ignorance. So what will the Scottish Government do to improve the quantity and quality of education about Judaism and the Jewish community, especially in the parts of the country where there is no local Jewish community? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Matthew. I think what the Scottish Government can do is make sure that in all aspects of the support that we make available to the education system, that there are materials and the information that enable there to be a full explanation of the range of faith and belief communities within our society. It is, you have made reference a number of times in my contribution this evening to the role of faith and belief communities conference, and arising from that, I know from my period as Education Secretary that Education Scotland works to make sure that educators are informed, equipped with materials that enable them to address that concern that you have, that prejudice thrives on ignorance, and to ensure that the materials and the information and the rounded curricular advice is available to enable educators to properly educate young people about the aspirations that we have for the creation of an inclusive society, and that should be reflected in all education steps that we take forward.
Thank you very much. Now, we've only got time for a couple more questions. I'm going to go to the floor quickly for Sammy to ask a quick question.
Good evening, Mr. Minister. My name is Sammy Steen, and I'd like to thank you for coming to meet our community tonight. A few years ago, the Sunday Times had an article in it written by Alex Massey, in which he said, "I am not sure any decent person could continue to associate themselves with the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign, known as the SPSC." He continued, "Appearing at SPSC demonstrations and other events is like bathing in a sewer. Bathing in a sewer is what he said." The leader of the SPSC is called Mick Napier. The SPSC has a number of members who are known to be anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers. A few weeks ago, as Kimberly said, Nick Napier was given the Najashi Award for a non-Muslim supporting the Muslim community. This is a man that has for decades verbally abused, harassed, and attacked members of the Jewish community. On October the 6th, as Kimberly said, we had a vigil at Kelvin Grove Art Gallery. And throughout that whole vigil, Nick Napier used the loudest PA system I have ever heard to call people in this room rats, swines, and supporters of genocide. Now, First Minister, you were at the awards ceremony, and I'd like to ask you, what was your reaction to Mick Napier being selected to receive this award? A few years ago, Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's Chief Constable in Livingston, pulled out of a multi-faith meeting when they heard that there was going to be a Iranian cleric speaking at that meeting who likened gay marriage to bestiality. So how would you feel, First Minister, if this evening at this meeting, the Jewish community decided to give a special award to someone who has abused the Muslim community for decades and has been arrested and convicted more than once for doing so? Thank you.
Sam, I dated those awards for a brief period. I wasn't there for the whole event, so I have no, I'm afraid I don't have any knowledge of. Well, I'm simply explaining to you that I wasn't there for the whole evening. It's a statement of fact, and I don't know this gentleman, Nick Napier. I have no knowledge of him. I've never encountered him.
Come on, the papers every week.
Well,
You read the papers.
I'm simply saying that I don't have any knowledge of this individual. Any of the language that you've recounted that's been used, in my view, is wholly and completely unacceptable. Wholly and completely unacceptable. And
So what was it about it?
well, obviously, if there has been, what has to be done about that is that when that happens, that should be reported to the police.
The police were there and they just watched, did nothing. We're talking to them. They were
Specific-
pathetic.
It's a specific case. We let the First Minister answer.
So I give these answers to people, and sometimes people get very frustrated by them, but I have no operational control over the police. If I start that, well, you may shake your head, sir, but I don't. And if I start having operational control over the police, there'll be one heck of a hullabaloo in this country. People will absolutely despise that if I have operational control over the police. I'm simply saying what the law is. And I believe, and I ask you to respect my view as somebody who believes in the rule of law. I'm a lawmaker and I believe in the rule of law. There's a hate crime law that's been passed in this country. And what you've recounted to me, what somebody's said to me tonight, which is news to me, I've not heard that before. All that language sounds to me to be wholly unacceptable. And if that was harangued at you at Kelvin Grove Art Gallery, then to me that would suggest that it merits investigation by Police Scotland. Now that's as far as I can go. So if I go further than that, I start intruding on the operational independence of the police, and it doesn't matter what circumstance I'm in, I won't do it because that will get us into a mess as a democracy. The First Minister of the country is running the police.
Can I just?
And I just want to let me conclude by saying that I totally and utterly understand the hurt and the anguish and the anger that you will feel about these issues. And I take incredibly seriously the concerns that you expressed to me. And on a regular basis, and representatives of this community will attest to this because they sit around my table when I am doing this. I engage on these questions directly with Police Scotland to make sure these concerns are heard by Police Scotland, and I will do so again in the light of this discussion tonight.
First Minister, thank you. I'm sure you can tell that we're a very passionate community, but we appreciate your honesty. Thank you, Sam. We've got a question from Aberdeen. Aberdeen Jason, I believe.
Yeah, hi, hello. Can you pull up the chat? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Right, so yeah, we have a few questions ready. Just a second. Yeah, here we go. So our first question is, what action will be taken to prevent an event such as the ones, for example, that occurred in Amsterdam recently, the pogrom? Will there be any actions taken to prevent such events happening in the future here in Scotland?
Well, certainly for any, in any circumstance, people must be safe in Scottish society. And when it comes to any events that are arranged and organised in Scotland, providing they are compatible with the rule of law, individuals should be protected by the arrangements put in place by Police Scotland in those circumstances. And where there are events, you talked about the vigil at Kelvin Grove, the proper dialogue with the police should be undertaken to ensure that individuals are safe in all those circumstances.
Thank you, First Minister. Well, it's not been the easiest set of questions for you, and I think I do have a couple of other ones, mainly about Donald Trump. I think we'll leave them for next time. Are we going for a vote of thanks to Edinburgh? Matthew, for a vote of thanks.
Yeah, First Minister, on behalf of the Jewish community, I thank you most sincerely for holding this meeting with us. We greatly appreciate it. I know personally that although you are extremely busy, you are generally committed to speaking to and engaging with the Jewish community in Scotland. We were very pleased to welcome you here at our synagogue at Edinburgh recently on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and I know that you will be coming here again next month for an event with Jewish students from across Scotland. So thank you for the time and effort you are putting into getting to know the Jewish community in Scotland at first hand. We are grateful that this evening you have answered such a range of questions that matter so much to the Jewish community and have done so frankly and directly. We know there's many more questions that we wanted to ask, and hopefully there will be another opportunity. But it is important to us that you and your government understand what we care about, know the concerns of Jewish people in Scotland, and act as much as you can to address those concerns. So I thank you for working with the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities to help deepen that understanding and that work. I would also like to thank everyone in Skojak who's organised this event, Rabbi Rose for the prayer at the start of the meeting, and everyone who has attended in Glasgow, here in Edinburgh, in Aberdeen, and throughout Scotland online. Thank you.
Use the mic.
We're presenting the First Minister with a gift. It's a book entitled Jewish Glasgow. This is a great read. Can I enjoy that, First Minister?
Thank you so much.